Welcome to the Wilmac Wire. I'm Emily Miller, joined by my co-host, Steve McDonnell. On this show, we talk with the drivers, the leaders, innovators, and decision makers pushing customer interaction technology and AI forward. And because we're proud to call Western New York home, we also spotlight the drivers in our own community, the people and organizations shaping growth and innovation right here. Let's get into it. All right. Thanks for tuning in to the Wilmac Wire. Excited to introduce today's guest. I'm here physically in the studio with Steve McDonnell, my co-host. And Vinny, you get to experience now a nice basketball intro as part of the Wilmac Wire. So, coming in at 6 feet tall from Fairport, New York, a graduate of SUNY Geneseo, entering the public service realm in 2003. Now the Senior Vice President for Regional Economic Development at Empire State Development. This is a long list. Got a lot of stuff to go through. A member of Governor Kathy Hochul's Upstate Governmental Affairs team. A friend of the McDonnell family, and therefore a friend of this podcast. Welcome to the Wilmac Wire, Vinny Esposito. Thanks for being here.
All right, what an intro. Thank you. Let's do it.
We said last time I got to get a banner and turn the lights down, get the smoke machines going.
Chicago Bulls music. Get the background going.
She's getting better every time. Yeah. We should get some sort of background music.
Yeah, for sure. But Vinny, thanks for tuning in and joining us for the podcast today. Obviously, like I mentioned, you and Steve have known each other for a long time. Where do you guys go back to?
Fairport High School. Probably even before high school, because he was I was a teammate with my brother.
Oh, okay.
So Vinny was probably in high school. I was younger, so I good buddies with Steve Esposito. And played basketball growing up since, I don't know, fourth grade probably with Steve. So I don't know what grade you were in when Steve was in fourth. But all of Vinny's brothers I've gotten to know over the years. Great family, great basketball family, and now all very involved in great operations in Rochester.
Yeah. Born and raised Rochester, right, Vinny?
Yep. Grew up in Fairport.
Okay.
Went to Geneseo. Lived in Irondequoit for the last 20 years. So I've been in Rochester my whole life.
Dang. Yeah. We'll get to the basketball part. Don't worry. That's the part I'm most excited to talk about for sure.
We can make this a basketball podcast.
Yeah, we can make this a basketball podcast. That sounds good. Steve, what do you think? All right, Vinny, we're going to start kind of with your career path and learning more about kind of how you've evolved. I mean, you studied computer science at SUNY Geneseo. You're now in government. You helping lead Empire State Development statewide. How did you get here? What drew you into kind of this career path?
That's a great question. It's certainly not your traditional route into public service. But yeah, I studied computer science at Geneseo. Went to work after college for a computer company, writing software, managing projects, working on databases. I did that for 6 years. And the short story is that company was owned by now Congressman Joe Morelle. And after a few years working for his software company, I really said to him one day, I'm pretty interested in your public and political life. Could I change careers and come work for you? And that's how it happened. I went pretty much the next day to work for his then assembly office. I like to joke as his driver, but it really wasn't a joke. I really became kind of his main personal aide, and he took me everywhere for years, and I got an up-close and personal mentorship right into the world of politics and government. And there's really nobody better to have as your mentor than Congressman Morelle. He's an incredible human being and a great public servant. And so I've been doing this since then in some form or another, serving the public in the government realm, local and state levels.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Why? What made you you're in your career, you're developing software, and you're like, maybe not anymore. Was there any particular point that you were like, no, this isn't for me?
Now, the truth is, as a young kid going into college, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I knew getting computer skills would help me in whatever profession I chose. And so I kind of jumped into that. I'd always loved government and politics. I remember taking leadership courses in high school at Fairport. We had a great program. But I didn't want to go to college for government because I didn't know what you would do with that unless you maybe wanted to be a teacher. So it's something I didn't want to do. And after college and you're in the working world and you start to see how government impacts your business and your life, you're like, oh, okay, I get it a little more now, and I see an opportunity to give back to my community and work in this space. And, you know, because I had a great mentor with Joe, I was able to jump in and do that. That's the short story. I kind of just took me a little while to find what I loved and what I wanted to do, because I didn't know that's what it was when I was an 18-year-old kid.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great story. I didn't know that, actually, that you've been working with him for that long.
Yeah.
I was always curious how you got into it, but I mean, it would make sense. And it's, I guess, in general, for anyone, how they jump into that political realm.
Well, any business, any career, it usually comes down to who you know and who you meet when and what, you know, transpires from that. It's certainly the case in politics. But that's the short story. I worked for Joe from the day I left college until really almost 15 years before I left to come into what is in essence my current role, which is working at Empire State Development and working for the governor's office, where I've been for 13 years now.
Do you have interest to dive back into?
I get that question all the time. What I like to say is I really love what I'm doing, because, you know, if you are in this space as a business owner, you might have a sense of it, or having talked to people like Bob Duffy. There are so many challenges to transform and grow the upstate economy, and I am in an incredible position to be able to do that at the agency I'm in, that I've really, really loved that. That's not to say I wouldn't jump back into politics, although, you know, these days it's not exactly an exciting or pleasant proposition. But I believe strongly in public service and would never say no to any opportunity to help this community in particular, where I've lived my whole life.
Right. And as part of that, you went from overseeing just the Finger Lakes region to now leading all 10 regional offices across New York. What was that transition like? Was it quick, or did it take kind of a period of time to get there?
That's another good question. So, yeah, I was really the Finger Lakes regional director for almost 10 years, which meant my responsibility was this 9-county region around Rochester.
So that's like the greater
Rochester region. Yep. And that's what I focused on. And I really loved that job, because that's where you're working on specific projects, whether they're, you know, construction development, their partnerships with the university, their workforce development, all kinds of things. And you're trying to recruit and attract businesses that can grow. And I really loved it. It's what I really believe in. And then, you know, the truth is, when Governor Hochul came into office, you know, she was someone I knew, and she knew me and trusted me and asked me to take on larger responsibility across the state, running our regional offices and participating on her intergovernmental affairs team. And it was an incredible honor and opportunity. I miss a lot of aspects of working more in the daily grind of the projects and the region. But now I get to help my colleagues and build a team who are doing that in all 10 of New York State's regions. And, of course, still get involved in some of the higher priority projects and issues. It's just kind of, you know, more about the issue of the day than it is about implementing a larger strategy, which is really what we've been trying to do in New York State for the last dozen years. I mean, I came over to work for Empire State Development when the regional councils were formed. So you may know what that is, you may not, but in essence, 13 years ago, we created 10 advisory boards across New York of stakeholders, business owners, university presidents, and community organizations to basically provide a strategy for their region, recognizing the state isn't just one economy, and making recommendations into New York State as to what we should fund to implement that strategy. That was exciting and pretty, I won't say revolutionary, but groundbreaking work for the way state government goes about economic development. So I really enjoyed that. I believe in it still, and that's still what I'm helping implement on a statewide basis.
When you were in that day-to-day Finger Lakes role, would you be collaborating with, like, the Matt Holberts of Greater Rochester Enterprise and the Bob Duffys to help recruit?
Still do on a daily basis, honestly, because I'm still based in Rochester, even though I have a statewide purview. But yes, those are our partners. And in fact, our region, I think, has done an exemplary job of collaborating across those organizations. You know, I think you said you had Bob in before. But we in this region, really 6 years ago now, created a pretty unique alliance of all the organizations that participate in economic development. So state, county, and city government, but also then the Chamber of Commerce, Greater Rochester Enterprise, Visit Rochester, and our other partners at places like NextCore and the Downtown Development Corporation, to start to work even more closely together than we already have. It's called One Rock. It was called Rock 2025. It just changed last year. But it is a way to identify all of the ways we can work together to be more efficient as a region, to compete, to grow our economy, to attract businesses, and to do all of the things that support them. It's an incredible team. And in government and out of government that does this still on a daily basis. I don't do as many of those projects myself, but I still go to some of them. Last week, the team pulled together a group of a company looking to establish here with some foreign investment in the software space. And it's how economic development should work, and it still does here in this community.
Yeah, that's great to hear. We've seen it since we've tried to be more a part of the community, I'd say, in the past 3 to 4 years, that there are great organizations. And I don't even know if most of Rochester realizes you guys are out there and doing this. I mean, I've seen just in the past year, we were just talking before we hopped on here, our building downtown is all of a sudden became very vibrant. A lot of things are going down there. You can walk around. People are going to lunch. And I don't think people out in maybe the suburbs realize that there's some good stuff going on downtown.
Yeah, there's a lot of great stuff. And it doesn't happen by accident. You have to have people working on this. I know sometimes those organizations are either not known or they're maligned, or sometimes people criticize corporate welfare and the incentives that the state might put together to get a business to grow somewhere. But that transition of Rochester's economy has been underway for decades. And it's really changed now. It's been slow going in part because our economy's been slow growing, and because the pandemic kind of stalled out a little bit, particularly of that downtown revitalization work that you're kind of alluding to, Steve, that I spend a lot of time on still, because one of the main initiatives that I do still work on regionally is the Rock the Riverway initiative, which has been going on for several years, that I helped start with the state and the city. It's a partnership to revitalize the river waterfront, the Genesee River waterfront in downtown Rochester. And so that's a big piece of just making your downtown core an attractive place to work, like you guys moved into, or to live, or to visit. And that's a hugely important part of growing an economy. It's not just about business X is growing by Y jobs. It's about creating that whole ecosystem that makes you want to be here because your employees want to be here because you have other advantages to being here. And that's not easy to do.
Yeah. You mentioned this a little bit in your previous answer by staying involved in some of the local projects. But how do you stay grounded in those regional roots coming from Rochester while managing kind of a statewide focus?
Well, first and foremost, I'm grateful that I've been able to do this job and still live in Rochester. It was never really an option, in my career path. Going to Albany or other places is always something that's maybe more likely. But candidly, the two factors that have made that possible are the fact that we have a governor from Western New York, which is amazing, and the pandemic changed the nature of work and in person and the ability to connect virtually. And so I've been able to stay here, which also allows me to still stay in touch with some of the priority projects that either were very long-term, like Rock the Riverway, that I was working on as regional director, or that are oftentimes multi-agency. So, even within New York State government, an economic development project isn't always just something that ESD, which is what we call Empire State Development, is working on alone. It may be a partnership with New York State Parks, as is in the case with the new High Falls State Park that I'm working to help create, or with the Department of Environmental Conservation or the Department of Transportation. And so sometimes those are things that I still get involved in because of my intergovernmental role. And so I'm able to still stay in touch with the things I do care about and, making sure this region continues to grow, which is not dissimilar than the work that happens in places like Buffalo and Syracuse, because it's very similar. We're sibling metros, and while we compete in some things, we've been going through the same growing pains and are starting to see the same light at the end of the tunnel with huge opportunities that are happening upstate.
What's your travel schedule like these days?
I was going to ask that.
So, I'm just coming off a very busy travel month in September, but by and large, it's not too bad. It's really once a week, one day a week, I'm on the road. I try to do it that way, and it's usually upstate places. It's Buffalo, it's Binghamton, it's Albany, and those are primarily day trips unless it's something a little more expansive. But, I do get down to the city and parts of the Hudson Valley and Long Island occasionally, which I love, because it's an incredible state, and you don't really appreciate it till you do travel it and go to those, hidden gems that you never knew about. But, just having a young family, being home is a premium. And so really try to do that as much as possible.
I was just up meeting with Saratoga County in
Talk
Saratoga.
about a beautiful place.
And I'm like, I haven't been here in ages. It's absolutely stunning up there.
Yeah. No question. Upstate for decades, the only places that were truly growing were Saratoga, Ithaca, and Canandaigua. And not surprisingly, they're all beautiful places. There are other reasons, but Saratoga is incredible.
We're in the midst of fall right now. Do you have any favorite activities that like you've done in the region? I know that's a super generic question, but
Well, if you've never done a wine tour in fall, you're not living in the Finger Lakes. I mean, that's easily number one. But as a avid golfer,
Yeah.
fall golf is the best golf. So that's a great way to see the foliage and enjoy your favorite activity as well.
I've heard golf. I've heard fall golf is fun. I don't
Emily's
know.
been out a few times.
Oh, you don't want to see me
She's
golf.
too competitive, so she gets frustrated.
Yeah, you'd rather see me on a basketball court.
That's one of the many
For sure.
negatives. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, perfectionist can't do it. So we're 15 minutes in, and I'm jumping into basketball now.
Oh, okay. All right.
So, Vinny, you and your brother's bit of a basketball legacy in Fairport, as Steve kind of alluded to. We've got 3 college hoopers in their room right here.
All right.
How has basketball had an impact on your life? Do you still play?
Well, I stopped playing when I had my first child, which is now 15 years ago.
Okay.
I like to say it's because my wife made me pick. She said, you can't still keep playing basketball, men's hardball, and golf. But the truth is, I was getting too injured and too slow
Yeah.
to be able to keep up with young guns like Steve on the court. But no, I don't play very much anymore. I coached my daughter last year. They both play basketball in their schools. I mean, I love it. Coming from Fairport basketball, where I had 3 younger brothers, which is why you're alluding to the legacy. There was an Esposito on the Fairport Raiders team pretty much the entire decade of the 90s. It was incredibly formative. We were blessed to have really incredible coaching with Jeff Fitch and now his son Scott Fitch. The 2 of them alone have coached Fairport basketball since 1975.
Wow.
Nobody else. And they're as good people as you can imagine anywhere, let alone the best basketball coaches. So that part of it was really formative. But I think the real thing that I got from Fairport basketball is just teamwork and being involved in a team sport. You learn life skills that you really need to have to cope and to succeed in almost any endeavor, but certainly in government and politics. Nothing happens by yourself. You have to figure out how to work with people, oftentimes people you don't always agree with. And certainly in the world of basketball or baseball, or whatever sport you're playing at a team level, you learn those things very young. And I was very grateful to be able to do that in a really cool culture in Fairport.
Yeah, not to dive away from Fairport, but we'll stay in there eventually. One of the things I've noticed, and Bob and I kind of talked about it, of being on the board of his chamber, is that I have grown up just seeing the media really with politics, and it's so divisive. And then I'm sitting in these board meetings, and they're talking about how they approach politicians, how they talk. And there's people being like, yeah, I'm a Republican, but I speak to this Democrat all the time. And it seems like on a local level, it might not get publicized enough, might not hit the media. People are working a lot more together and collaborating than how it's kind of on a larger scale.
Yeah.
What we see today. Have you found that in New York?
There's no question that's true. And it's partly what I've loved about government, because I don't really like the divisive national media, public sphere, if you will. Local government is typically not particularly partisan. It's about getting things done. It's about making sure that the sewers work and that the trash is picked up. As you go up levels, the issues become more ideological and more partisan by nature, and so that discourse tends to get tougher. But by and large, in upstate New York especially, political discourse is pretty civil and pretty constructive, particularly in the world of economic development, because we all have seen what a declining economy has done to our region, and we're all invested in having a better future. It's not to say we don't have disagreements, but I think it is true that for the most part, people don't bring their partisanship to every interaction like you see if you just watch the news or if you're just on social media, where it's not only ever present, it's getting worse, and it's getting worse intentionally with the way we consume media. And it's tough. I talked to Congressman Morelle about this a lot because it's a very different environment when he went to D.C. versus was even in Albany, which is not known as the most functional place historically, but compared to what we've seen in D.C. in recent years, it's eminently better in terms of the ability to talk to other elected officials, other people in government, particularly those in the other party, from wherever you are. So it's a challenge. You have to be mindful of it. We have a system of government where the politics is, a big factor in intentionally. That's how democracy works. But you also at some point need to put the politics down and govern, and that's where compromise and collaboration are essential. And not everyone is valuing it the same way anymore. Yeah. And I do bring this back to the question. That's kind of what you get from team sports. You learn that at some point there's a goal you're trying to achieve.
Right.
You're not just playing a game for game's sake, which a lot of people who just live online or just play politics, that's all they're doing. And it's unfortunate because real people, real progress can suffer if you don't have a government that's ultimately trying to make things better for the people it's serving.
Mm-hmm. Did you play with Steve?
I did.
Did you get mad at him for just shooting all
well,
the time?
he was a lot younger than me. And then he became a lot better than me. So I kind of avoided him.
Gotcha.
You know. And
I'm back. I don't play either anymore. So
no,
it's probably been 10 years since I've played.
I don't either. I've had, like you said, I've had too many friends get injured poorly. I don't want to have to deal with that. But I know Steve's talked about his rec games and going 3-point line to 3-point line, just staying out of the paint.
The last few times I've played, I just go 3-point line. I'm not getting in the paint.
Well, we all still have illusions that we're still great shooters.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's like
I mean, I can shoot from anywhere. What are you talking about?
But yeah, I agree. I mean, the Fitches, we were very lucky to have them. I had Jeff for 2 years, and then I was the first year with Scott too, which was great.
Yeah.
Still consider Scott a mentor. Hopefully we'll have Scott on.
Yeah, we talked about him.
The podcast at some point. But teamwork, just being able to grow up in that atmosphere is great for all of us, and has been big for me. Looking up to people like you guys playing while growing up was great, and just the atmosphere that they kind of set for everyone at Fairport was awesome.
They instilled characteristics that were far beyond just how you were as a basketball player, how you were as a person, and how you worked towards your goals. That just lucky to have. I mean, I really consider Coach Fitch, who I still call Jeff, a mentor, just like Joe Morelle, in terms of different stages of my life, helping guide me. And Scott was a hero for me, right? You know, I followed him to Geneseo.
Yeah.
I know you went to Geneseo after I did, not for that reason, but it was a lineage and a legacy, to use the word in one of your earlier questions, for sure.
I do know, though, that Stevie Espo is still getting out there playing.
I don't know how he does it. With 3 young kids
I know.
and the knees that kid's got, I don't know how he does it.
The knees, yeah. Don't have to talk to me about my knees and my ankles. You touched on a lot of great stuff there, Vinny, and I agree. Like, when Steve and I talk about recruiting, like, we often look for college athletes or student athletes that knew how to balance the many facets of jobs, school, getting good grades, the athletic part of it, the teamwork, the camaraderie. I agree. It was just complete transformative. Still, even though I don't play a big part of my life and a big love of mine, I want to coach my kids someday. So, happy to have a fellow baller on here.
That's right.
Yeah. Changing topics a little bit. We chatted about this with Bob Duffy about the blueprint for New York that was put out. I'm assuming you played a role in that report. What was that like?
Well, not really. That report was issued by, it's a partnership of the Business Council of New York State and the New York State Economic Development Council, which are organizations we work with, but it was issued by them. So the state wasn't a participant directly anyway. I know it's mostly a report talking about state policies and the challenging business environment in New York State, or at least how it was characterized. So certainly well aware of it, but we weren't part of developing it. Gotcha.
Okay. And after reading through it and talking about it with Bob, it lays out some pretty stark realities about doing business in the state, the high taxes, regulations, workforce challenges. How are you and your team at ESD addressing these sorts of issues?
So, this report is just another of, what I would characterize as many over the years that are critical of kind of the business environment in New York State based on, some metrics that people use to compare to other states. Some parts of it I think are unfair. Other parts of it are just the reality we work with. So at ESD, a lot of the times we are working to overcome perceptions, like some of the things that are identified in the report, or in other cases, overcome real barriers, real challenges that businesses face. So, that's why we have incentive programs for certain types of businesses that are looking to grow, to come to New York, to do that here. It's why we have other investments we make into partnerships, why we help with workforce development, and, why we help our institutions of higher learning and all kinds of other ways to help make this, a hospitable place to business, which, some people just scoff at. But it's true. I mean, there's not any reason in the world not to come do business in New York State. There may be other places that you can do business better. God bless you. But there are plenty of industries that you can thrive in New York, particularly in upstate New York. And that's what we've been working on. So, this report highlights some of those things. I know some of those things are things that we're actively looking at and working on. You can never just say everything's perfect and just hope for the best. You have to continually improve. And this governor has shown that every year when she comes out with her agenda. She's willing to take on new issues that will make New York more competitive and a better place to live, work, and play. And we're doing that right now. Sort of the cycle is we prepare for the January start of the legislative session. The governor's State of the State address lays out her agenda, and then her budget lays out the fiscal proposal for the state. And that's really when, the decisions she's made about what we're going to do next come out. But right now we're in the policy development stage of that. So that's why that report came out, and that's why we're reviewing those things. It's in particularly on the regulatory side, why we're looking at how we can reduce some of the regulatory timeline or impact on different types of businesses that want to do things, which is, I think, one of the, fairer criticisms of New York State. But on the flip side, there's always reasons for those things, right? We have regulations because we have incredible natural resources that we want to protect, right? As much as I get frustrated like the next person who's trying to help a business grow with the Department of Environmental Conservation, I really thank God they exist and that they're there to protect our water from becoming unduly polluted or ruined, because, our water resources is one of the most important resources we have, particularly in upstate New York. So you've got to balance all those things. And, I've learned, certainly being in government, how to see both sides of those things, maybe a little bit more than, people who are just a business who feel like they're being hammered by the Department of Labor because of unemployment insurance or something of that like, or they're getting some kind of violation for something that happened that, it can be frustrating. And oftentimes it can just take too long to resolve, which is, I think, all of our frustration. So, this report, like many others, just highlight the ways we can improve. And so ESD is a part of that, whether it's on a project-by-project basis or whether it's part of developing the governor's policy agenda for the coming year, which we're actively doing right now.
Yeah, I think a lot of that, what I saw was the red tape that is tough to get around. And I think, as you're saying, ESD and many people in the state are aware that there's a lot of tape and things, just processes moving slow. And in our particular world, AI and software, everything is moving at light speed these days, obviously.
Yeah.
So we were just talking about water and stuff. One of the things, upstate New York just happens to be a great spot for the possibility of having an AI hub, having data centers here. And there's a lot of back and forth on, is it doable? Is it going to pollute the water? Is it too noisy? Do you guys get in it? I'm sure you're getting proposals from people all from the big FANG companies looking to build some stuff here. Where do you stand on that? How do you see that moving? I'm sure this is going to keep just cranking up.
Yeah, there's no question that the increase in demand for AI services is growing exponentially and will continue to do so. But it's also a complicated question. So on one hand, yes, we want to attract as many developers and people working on the technology to make it better as we possibly can in New York. New York City certainly is a beacon of that and a beehive of that. The governor's created an initiative, a consortium called Empire AI, which has invested a lot of state resources as well as some private foundations to improve the computing power available at the University of Buffalo, with consortium members to be able to have access to the things that really sometimes only the largest private companies in the world have access to, that kind of computing power to be able to take on some projects that would be seen as helping the public good, whether it's in healthcare or public safety. So that's a really exciting thing that has attracted some of the talent. But on the flip side, ironically, and this may sound counterintuitive, we really have kind of been fighting off the data centers. And this is the really trick with how you meet the demand for AI services, but deal with the growth of data centers that are needed to meet that demand. Because data centers are not what you would consider to be the ideal economic development project. They usually consume a lot of land, a lot of electricity, and a lot of water, but don't provide a lot of jobs. And so that's not really what we're looking for in upstate New York. We're looking for manufacturing jobs like we've seen with Micron and the semiconductor industry. Still very high tech, still meeting that demand of the future. But we have been actually fighting off the AI data centers because we already have an electricity issue, right? We have now, for the first time in, again, decades, the availability of electricity is becoming a scarce resource as we convert the way we generate and how we deliver electricity. And so we're trying to meet the growth for housing and for manufacturing jobs. We don't want to just give all of that electricity to be sucked up by a data center. So we've only really had one new data center that we've agreed to come to New York recently. That's in Genesee County at the Stamp site, which is an industrial site, which is strategically located within the hydropower zone of Niagara Falls, so they can get cheaper electricity where we had it available and it wasn't available for other uses. But by and large, we aren't trying to recruit more of those data centers. We want the talent on the development side to come to New York, but we're trying to avoid the sort of drain that the data centers are showing in places like the nation's capital in Northern California, where it's a real challenge now to meet particularly those electricity needs, because they're exponential in terms of how much electricity those centers are currently using.
And we just don't have the infrastructure for the electricity.
I think that's safe to say, right? We have to continue to improve the electricity grid to meet demand. So we're seeing, all across Upstate, all across the state, really all across the country, these bottlenecks of grid infrastructure to be able to meet the increased demand just for, think about what you charge in your house now. All your devices, if you have an electric car, let alone if you're converting your furnace to a heat pump, all these things that are increasing demand for electricity just in daily life, let alone having, an enormous new data center next door. So we're challenging with that. We are challenged with that already. And so that's kind of the priority at the moment as we improve the grid, as we transition our generation away from just traditional uses of obviously coal power plants, but even natural gas. Nuclear is an interesting one because the governor has signaled to meet that demand. We're really pushing harder to reach, to actually renew and create new nuclear energy generation in New York State, as well as the existing other sort of alternative energy technologies, wind, solar, and the like, which New York's being extremely aggressive about getting onto the grid. So these are all parts of the equation that you asked about, AI, which is the future of the world, and there's no region, there's no business industry that isn't going to be touched by it. But it's a complicated one in terms of just an economic development play.
Yeah, I saw a report. I don't know if it was Blackstone or BlackRock that the PE firm had put out. And in U.S., generally for the past 80 to 100 years, our electricity was pretty flat. And you can pretty much look at when ChatGPT was really launched and started being used by the masses. All of a sudden, there's just a hockey stick straight up already.
It's astonishing to see those charts. It was tough just to see the charts that were slowly increasing in terms of meeting demand with the way we're, changing the way electricity is generated. But it's a huge problem. It's one that will have to be met because the demand is not going away, right? People aren't going to use their devices less or expect less from AI services in any way, shape, or form. But it's not an easy solution. It's why you start to see some of the big companies creating these data centers at places where they have their own dedicated electricity. I mean, talk about reopening 3 Mile Island for Microsoft, just have their own nuclear reactor to run AI data centers, nothing else. I mean, that's an interesting thing. It's not necessarily easy or good, but that's what they're looking at.
So you said you were talking about possible nuclear in New York. Obviously, nuclear's changed a lot in the past 30 years.
Yeah.
Do we have old nuclear sites? Do we build new ones in land? How does that
so
work?
Upstate New York, just our region alone has 3 nuclear power plants not far away on Lake Ontario. There's a couple others in Upstate New York that generate a very large portion of New York State's electricity already. They are extremely reliable and from a emissions perspective, very clean. Obviously, there are other risks with nuclear. But the reason the governor and others across the country and world are now taking another hard new look at nuclear is because the technology has changed. It's not just these giant nuclear reactors that have a higher risk of, I don't want to be scare tactics, but like melting down like we may have remembered when we were kids. There's these modular nuclear reactors that are much smaller, much easier to deploy in settings that you couldn't build a traditional Ginna nuclear power plant, which is the closest one in Wayne County. And so there are a lot of applications for this technology. It's still a very long horizon to build it. I mean, still like 10 years to build a functioning, modular nuclear reactor in a reasonably sized setting. Maybe that can be a little less. The federal government has made commitments to make that less, and the governor's pushing as well. But none of these solutions are cheap or easy or quick, but they're real solutions for the future. So it's not just that we're going to have a zillion wind farms or solar farms. It's got to be, as the governor likes to say, an all of the above approach, which continues to use fossil fuels as long as we have to make sure we're meeting demand, to have reliability and affordability, which are all tough to put together at the same time and make everybody happy. It's why no one's happy with their utility company, and why you probably see a lot of things in that blueprint report that criticize New York State's energy policy. But you have to look to the future. You have to plan the long game, which is not easy to do in politics and government, but that's what we're doing.
Does New York, I don't even know this. This is kind of a off-topic question. Does the state partner with RG&E and NYSEG, and how does that even work?
So those entities, those utility companies, are basically chartered in essence by New York State. They have a tariff, an agreement with the state to serve certain areas. So there's a handful, probably a dozen in total, but fewer than that, large utility providers across the state. They all have their own geographic region, and they're legally required to do certain things. The Public Service Commission, you probably have heard of them, is the one that regulates them. And they are very heavily regulated, even though there was deregulation in the way electricity was generated. In terms of how those companies deliver electricity, the requirements they have to meet to ensure reliability and affordability and have their rates approved is pretty heavily scrutinized by New York. So there are partners in some cases, in most cases, but they still have an obligation to the tariff that they have to New York, to the ratepayers and the people they're providing service to. And so it's a challenging relationship sometimes. More often than not, just like I said earlier, in the economic development space, we work together very well. But their resources are starting to be stretched in ways we haven't really seen. That's what I get to when I was talking about the demand for electricity. Yeah. And so their ability to keep up with their infrastructure is simply not there. And so you have to combine how much people can pay, how much public entities like the state can pay through other taxpayer resources, how much those companies are required to pay to meet that demand. And it can be very frustrating, particularly for people in the development community that want to deliver products that we need, like housing, where we have a shortage, which is another really interesting issue. How can we have a shortage where we have a population that hasn't grown very fast? Well, there's a lot of changes to the way people live that require new housing opportunities, particularly affordable ones. And we're not able to meet that housing demand right now because of electricity shortages in some places. So the electricity conversation honestly is at the top of the list in almost everything we've been dealing with lately. I feel like for the first 10 years that I was at ESD, it was all about workforce, and it still is enormously important because you have to have qualified workers. You know better than most wherever you go. But the last few years, power has been dominating the conversation because it transcends any use. It's not just about manufacturers or software developers. It's about people's residences.
That's so interesting.
Shout out to Fairport Electric.
It is a nice little panacea that's there, Fairport Electric, because of the investments from public power and the hydropower that's been generated in New York State for a long time. I mean, people also take for granted not only the nuclear that we generate upstate, but the hydropower that is generated in Niagara,
right,
and then up in the St. Lawrence is really one of our biggest differentiators in New York State, especially one of our biggest competitive advantages, aside from just the natural resource of water. That electricity is massive. And it's something that was built generations ago. I don't know if you've been to the Niagara Power Project in Niagara Falls. It should be its own tourist destination. It's incredible.
Huge.
Yeah. I mean, I just moved out to Genesee County, and I think we have so many solar panels being installed out there. It's pretty crazy.
It is. It's striking to see the size of some of the solar projects in Genesee County, which I know has become an issue. They're feeling like they've done their part with the solar that's been already permitted. And, I get it because, no one really wants the solution for electricity generation to be every piece of earth covered in solar panels, right? That's not really what we're going for. Yeah. That has a role to play, and I know some people believe it's already too much, whether it's the wind turbines or solar panels. But Genesee County has certainly been very aggressive and forthcoming or forward-thinking in that space, and that's caused some concern.
Yeah, no, I didn't realize that. I lived in Monroe County for the past few years, and moving out there, I was like, okay, dang, there's a lot of cornfields, a lot of solar panels out here. But the separate topic, you talked a lot about AI. Have you personally in your role been using AI, or is your focus more so on addressing the impact of it?
Yeah, it's definitely the latter. I'm not a huge adopter. I mean, I use it sort of in passing like a lot of people with mostly search features and funny memes from my brothers. But
we love memes.
Exactly. But it's mostly on just figuring out how New York State can competitively take advantage of the resources we have here, especially among our higher education institutions, to keep talent and to bring in companies that are working in this space to help be a part of the future economy of New York. It's happening. I really haven't talked much about semiconductors in this yet, but that's a lot of what we spend our time in because it's such a big piece of the governor and the state's economic strategy going forward. I mean, the Micron project that's coming to Syracuse will be the single largest manufacturing project in U.S. history in Syracuse. It will be massive, and it will transform upstate New York much like the Erie Canal transformed upstate New York 200 years ago. It will have that big of an impact in an industry that is not, well, I shouldn't say it's not susceptible to markets up and down because they are, but it's not going away. The need for semiconductor chips, in this case it's memory chips, not necessarily intelligence chips, is enormous because of the conversation we just had about AI and the way people are living and the computing power that's needed. Right. And so we've been very aggressive at trying to get those companies here and get the workforce to meet that demand. Just Micron alone is going to have 9,000 people working there, let alone the economic impact of all their suppliers and all the people servicing those facilities. So, those are things that we're working on strategically. And, the same can be said for some of the other industries we're really playing in. We talked about green technology. We've talked about technology and software. But the other one that we're huge into in upstate New York is food production, particularly dairy. The Fairlife facility that's about to open in Webster, I don't know if you've been out near there recently. Every time I go by, I'm truly blown away how big it is. Yeah. It's massive. And it's just one example of a handful of major dairy projects in upstate New York with Chobani and Upstate and Hood and Great Lakes Cheese, which has had some hiccups down in the southwest part of the state. But these are incredible value-add products for what is a huge natural resource in our state, which is our dairy farms, to be able to improve the economy of the entire upstate region. It's, these are things that, these just didn't happen overnight. We've been working on semiconductors and even food production and technology innovations for decades. And it's starting to pay dividends because of those investments we've made, both public and private sector, to transition away from some of the older technologies in manufacturing we've seen that haven't survived. So I know I went on a big tangent from your question about whether I use AI or if I'm just focused on developing and attracting the talent. But the point is, we have strategic industries and strategic spaces we are working towards the growth of, in my main focus, the upstate economy. Yeah.
So I always wonder, going back, so Micron, obviously huge. Everyone's talking about it. I put that like in what we do. That is the very, very back end of it. And we are the very, very front end developing applications using AI. And the AI is powered and built by the chips. So you're bringing that in here. What I haven't seen in New York, or Rochester for that matter, is and you said it earlier, it is in New York City. I mean, there are definitely a lot of software companies in New York City. But we don't try to promote, or I haven't seen, I shouldn't say don't, promote within, like, hey, these companies could grow right in Rochester. We're always, hey, let's try to get this person to come in and bring 9,000 employees and build this huge plant. Is there any, I'm sure there's stuff going on, but, I think about FANG. NVIDIA obviously is chips, but a lot of the FANG is actual software companies. Is there any of that in New York State where they're like, hey, and you kind of talked about, we got to keep these kids in Rochester coming out of RIT and U of R and whatnot. RIT, we recruit most of our dev team from RIT. But I mean, talking to the professors there, it's like 80% of them are going to California and New York. Yeah. How do we build the companies here that keep them here? And is that any of that started yet? I know a ton on your plate, obviously, with the 3 industries you just chose. And then even stepping back, was there a discussion point 10 years ago? It's like, all right, that type of talent is going to be out in California. They're already way ahead, and this is what we should focus on, and that's how we landed on semiconductors.
So there's a lot in that
There was a lot
question.
in there.
First and foremost, yes, those things happen all the time. I mean, part of the challenge with my line of business, if you will, is that the big projects get all the attention. So people talk about Micron for good reason. It's huge. It's beyond a grand slam, right? It's just the biggest thing that can happen in economic development. But all the other companies we work with, all the small businesses, whether we're helping them with a project or not, are the bread and butter of how you grow an economy. So these things have been happening for a long time. This is where that regional council and that strategic regional plan that was put in place, and what you decide to work on is what's been sort of advising what people like, the Chamber and the Greater Rochester Enterprise and the New York State focus on. And so we've been doing all that. We've been working on strategic industries. I mentioned semiconductors, ag and food. We have huge in optics in this community, which is
all over the place here.
Also is a big player in between what you're talking about, the base level of semiconductors and then your end level of applications. There's all these jobs and companies in between that develop the components that go into building the chips or making sure the chips have the right quality to them, or have them develop the tools that you use. So we're working in all these spaces, but a lot of it comes down to I think your question was about how do you keep talent from places like RIT to going other metros where they feel like there's greater career opportunity, and fairly have been for a long time. And that's something we've been working on very clearly. So the numbers you said, about 80% of kids leave. It's different from every school. Like RIT is an international school, U of R. Rough terms, the Finger Lakes region is 19 colleges. There's, I think, I used to remember this off the top of my head, but tens of thousands of college students. About a third of them will stay in the region after graduation. And we have been working very strategically to try to increase that by a little bit. We put in place programs to start to get economic development or regional promotion organizations into college campuses with freshmen to teach them about Rochester before, it's their last semester senior year and they've already got 17 offers in Silicon Valley.
Right.
We've done really cool things, like you may not even know this, but next to you, the old Xerox Tower is called Innovation Square, right? So that building is almost entirely a multi-college dorm.
Yeah.
With the University of Rochester primarily, but also RIT and SUNY Brockport. That was an intentional project of the One Rock Alliance, that group that I was telling you about, with that developer, to say, we don't really have, interestingly, a significant college presence in our downtown. Nor do we have any of our big companies downtown. So this is like 10 years ago. Almost every city in the United States that's done really well has three things. They have a major corporation that's been an anchor, like we used to have in Kodak. They've got a university, and they've probably got a really cool waterfront. And we really didn't have any of those. And so we've been working on them simultaneously. So we recruited Constellation to come, one of our now big three companies. We've tried to get Wegmans and Paychecks and have had different levels of success with those conversations in the past. And then we talked to U of R and RIT to say, U of R, you've got some college, Eastman School of Music, you've got some other facilities down here, but we need undergraduates downtown as part of the base of our revitalization efforts and as a way to expose them to the career opportunities and the quality of life in Rochester. So we did this Innovation Square project and intentionally bring juniors and seniors from these schools who are already in kind of some entrepreneurial or tech or innovation type courses of study to live in a downtown setting. There's e-gaming there. There's other programming there, to expose them to downtown living, to see if that will have a chance to take root. Because the real trick with Rochester, and we don't do a good enough job selling this, is yes, we want to attract companies, we want to keep workers, but you're never going to fully compete with Silicon Valleys or the Austins or the New Yorks or the Bostons, because they have things we don't have. But we have things they don't have, and we don't sell the quality of life you can get here for the cost of living, because it's unmatched when you just do that equation. You may not make the same amount of zeros if you stay here in a software job as you would if you went to California. But you're going to pay less for that house. You're going to have a better education for your children. And making people realize that when they're 20, 21 is hard to do. We're increasing, I think, our success rate. You've started to see in the last 10 years the number of younger adults staying in Rochester, and especially places like Buffalo. So it's turning over. When you and I went to high school in the 90s, pretty much everybody left town. But that's now changing because people are starting to see, all right, I don't really care what Rochester used to be. When we grew up, it was all about what Rochester used to be. Kodak, Xerox, it was yesterday. they're now seeing the opportunity to make it a cool new opportunity at a place like Wilmac or another software company that's going to be downtown. So you don't hear about those things because they don't get the same level of attention. But if you go into the Next Core incubator at Sibley Building, I bet you see plenty of entrepreneurs starting tech companies where they're trying to create, the jobs for those people. Or you're seeing a lot of those students give a go at creating their own job, their own business, instead of going to take a job out of state. So that work it's not easy. Selling Rochester is not going to be for everybody. But if you can, get people to open their eyes to what's here and the possibilities of what's here, we'll start to continue to improve in that space.
Yeah, I mean, I've been saying it since I've been back 4 years ago, and we talked about it with Bob. The potential is huge here, and the cost of living, you've failed to mention traffic and commute, which you, coming from a big city,
but that's quality of life.
Correct.
Those are all the quality of life things for the cost of living.
And that equation, we just don't get it out to the public.
Right.
I mean, most of the young kids that work at Wilmac are living in Rochester because of the quality of life.
And we tried to do that. So groups like Greater Rochester Enterprise have been selling those stats for years, but they don't resonate with a 19-year-old college sophomore, right? No. You got to find something that they think, oh, that's cool, right? Either it's a career track or something fun to do downtown. Even simple things like, I don't know if you've noticed, like the skate park right around the corner from your building. Yeah. Do you know how hard that was to get? That was a 20-year odyssey to get that downtown. We did it. It's been an overnight success story. It's utilized all the time. We're already expanding it. It's just one of the Rock the Riverway initiatives we're doing to make young people come downtown and believe Rochester's a fun place to be. Yeah. And so we have to do a lot more of that. We have to continue to do that. Nothing is a silver bullet unto itself. And so, that work continues. That's what I love. That's why I'm in this space.
Yeah, even like the Chamber has Campus Rock. They host their big
So you know
program.
what it is. So Campus Rock is the program that the Rock 2025 Alliance created to get into college campuses earlier. Yeah. So these are things that our economic development team strategically decided to do, and you know the name of how it's implemented, which is great.
Yeah, Talent Fest is the big thing that happens.
But I bet you didn't know that had anything to do with Rock 2025 or the Chamber of Commerce or the Regional Strategic Plan, right? So that's what you mean. You don't hear about how these things are happening, but sometimes you see the manifestation of them.
Right. Interesting. Last question, or I guess we have a few more questions. But you work closely with Governor Hochul. You've mentioned it a few times now. What has it been like working with her and working to implement her vision?
She's amazing. So I obviously love working for her. I'm proud of her. A Western New Yorker as governor of New York hasn't happened in a very long time. She's just got values that are similar to mine in terms of the way we grew up. She's a huge Bills fan, which first and foremost is my main litmus test of your character. But she just works harder than anybody I know. She has, the roots of a tough Irish Catholic upbringing to guide her in all situations. Running New York State is incredibly difficult. This is the most diverse state in the world in terms of you get everything thrown at you every day. You have the biggest city in the world, and you have some of the most depressed economic conditions anywhere. And she handles it with grace and tenacity and a nonstop attitude. So that's just my pitch for her. Yeah. I love her. But the challenges are incredible. I think you've seen her really catch her stride in the last year, focusing on public safety, affordability, and the upstate economic resurgence. You see her talking about those things all the time, despite the distractions that come with the issue of the day. And she really is true to that. She's focused, and she empowers people like me and agencies like mine to work on these things. And so I'm grateful to have that opportunity to serve under her and to work on these issues and her vision.
You said you've known her for a while.
Yeah. So I mean, politics is interesting. You never know how things are going to be, but. I've known her since before she was even in Congress. I guess I met her when she went to Congress, which was now 16 years ago. And I'll still remember, I'll tell the story, but really the first time I realized how good she was and how seriously she took her job. So Joe Morelle always taught me, take your job seriously and not yourself. It's really the key to a lot in life, but certainly a life in public service. And I remember we were at a very small community. I won't identify the community. I don't want to make anybody feel bad. In the Finger Lakes region that won our Downtown Revitalization Initiative competition, which meant that community was awarded $10 million from New York State to invest in its downtown, in this case, a village. And she was lieutenant governor at the time, right after Bob Duffy. And she came to that community to announce the $10 million. And she got out of the car to go into this little storefront in this little town where there was maybe 100 people packed in there to hear this great news. They were excited, obviously. And I go through the logistics with her, where she's going to be speaking, where she's going to go. And she starts grilling me about the projects that were in their proposal, in their application. And I remember thinking to myself, well, I really haven't delved into the details of these the way I should be to be answering these questions from the Lieutenant Governor. And I want to say to her, you don't need to worry about this. These people are going to be thrilled. You're just announcing the money.
Yeah.
I didn't say that to her because that's not the right thing to say, and because it was very clear to me that that would not have been a good enough answer. She wanted to know. She was there to do her job, to do it well, and that's the way she approaches every interaction. She doesn't take it for granted, and she doesn't let people like me off the hook for not doing the job to the best of our ability. And so, I've known her for a while. I've learned to make sure I'm ready when she comes to town or when she calls. And I appreciate that in a leader. I mean, that's what you need. You don't want people who are there taking it for granted or just playing politics for power's sake. You get a lot of that. I want to work for somebody that's mission-oriented and wants to change the nature of the future for our state and particularly upstate.
That's great. We've been a big fan of the NG 911 grants that were just announced.
Okay.
And Wilmac's been in the public safety business for 30 years, but me personally have only kind of dove into it since we developed and launched our new product for the 911 centers.
Yeah.
But it's been amazing to me to see it's such a mission critical environment and process that every town and community needs, and their technology is so
But those
far
type
back.
of things New York State does and helps with those upgrades that nobody really talks about, right? There's so much
It's
the
huge.
government does that we kind of just get caught up in the issues that are the headlines or the fights. But it is imperative to, especially in a state like New York, where you are at so many risks with the public safety, that you upgrade law enforcement technology, E911 centers, whatever it might be. There's no end of the issues you have to work on and the challenges we face.
I've been very surprised that one of the prominent concerns that business leaders downtown is always public safety.
Yeah.
And this grant comes out, and I barely, we're digging, having to reach out through the board to get to you. I'm like, how are they not announcing this to the masses that this is a great thing?
Yeah. We probably, I'm certain we did actually, but media is also a whole other conversation for different podcasts. But what rises up for the level of coverage is there's so much happening. You can't get everything to be known because the regular person wouldn't necessarily know how upgrading the technology to 911 center affects them. And certainly to put that on, I would say the 6 o'clock news, it's not even what we use as a barometer anymore. But there's a lot happening. You really have to pay attention if you want to know. It's why I like working in this space, because I focus a lot less on the noise and much more on the doing of things. Not to say we don't all have to deal with both, but I'm glad you bring that up. It's a perfect example of what New York State is doing and this administration is doing.
Very cool.
And we go state by state, and it's the NG 911 is very progressive for New York too, which I think is great that they're getting out in front of it.
Yeah, it is awesome. Vinny, are there any other exciting projects or initiatives you want to share with our listeners before we wrap up?
Oh, man. There are a whole bunch. I'll definitely make a pitch for the High Falls State Park. That's something I still work on regularly. It's something I think is going to be transformational for downtown Rochester to continue to make it a vibrant place that makes people less afraid of coming downtown and enjoying a natural resource that we haven't been able to use. Public's not been able to get down into the gorge and High Falls for over 100 years. And so we're going to protect that, clean it up, and make it publicly accessible. And I'm really excited about that project. This is a long-term thing. The cleanup alone is going to take several years, so it's not coming online anytime soon. But that's a commitment the governor has made to this community's future that I'm excited about. I've mentioned Micron and Fairlife. Those are huge projects. I was also very gratified to bring the PGA Championship back to Rochester. I know it maybe sound like a minor thing, or it's not till 2035, but
Big one.
I obviously was part of the last several that came here. We just did Bethpage with the Ryder Cup, where the state is the host because it's a state park. So we developed a good relationship with the PGA of America. And it was important to bring that back. Rochester doesn't have major league sports. Major golf is our major league sport, and we've now been lucky enough to have it pretty much once a decade, in addition to the other incredible tournaments that come to Oak Hill Country Club. So that was exciting. Something I'm proud to have worked on. And there's no end to what's happening. I encourage anyone listening that wants to know more to get in touch with me or Bob Duffy or any of our partners to understand, what we're doing to be strategic. I know I use that word a lot, but because it's not just reacting to things. We're not just using a tactic to help one business grow, but to try to really change the nature of the upstate economy, which has been in transition for 40 years, and we're really emerging from it. Kodak and Xerox they're still around. It's great, but they bottomed out, and we've now been able to create jobs and grow our economy through a really diversified group of companies like yours. And Rochester's future is bright. I want people to know that. And if they want to be a part of helping make it even better, to jump in and help, whether it's through the regional council, whether it's just being someone we can call on when we have a company that's looking here, and we're putting together a visit from a company from Japan or from Germany or from Pennsylvania. Rochester's a place you don't truly appreciate until you see it and you realize how great it is. We often don't talk it up as much as we should when we're from here. We kind of have a cynical view of it, but I will also say that's changing. I like to say I'm at the age where anyone older than me kind of really focuses on Rochester's past. Anybody younger than me really focuses on Rochester's future, and that's exciting.
That's a great point. Your age is like right at the tipping point.
It really is.
Before you leave, how was that? Because I thought getting the PGA Championship, I didn't think we'd be able to do it again because the transition to May and the weather, and you hit the nail. We don't have major league sports, so this is freaking great when it comes.
Yeah.
How was that process?
It was tougher than the last time, I'll tell you that. And it's not because of May. May worked out fine. We had one really rainy day, if you remember, but the course shined. The community shines. It's not dissimilar from the other conversations we have about other businesses. So it's the issue of what can Rochester offer as a midsize compared to metros that are larger. And for the PGA of America, these tournaments make so much money now that they love coming here. They love Oak Hill.
I've heard,
The course is incredible. And the people in this community support the tournament in terms of volunteering, ticket sales, and sponsorships better than almost anywhere else they go. But corporate sponsorships are harder to get here than they are in a bigger metro. And you mix in some of the other cost drivers that they have, the different or lower hotel stock than other major metros, or some of the course restoration work. It became very much like a site selection where we had to compete on cost to get them to come back. And so the good news is we had a really dedicated group of people working on this, and we had community partners at all levels, all the way down to the volunteer ambulance and fire departments, all the way up to the governor herself, directly involved in working with the PGA to bring it back here. And it was a good thing to get them to come back. They also agreed to go back to Bethpage a couple of times, so it's great for New York State. But it's just interesting to see it play out like a site selection would for a manufacturer, where we really had to, sharpen our pencils to get it to show to them. They wanted to be here, but we had to show to their board members and their stakeholders that it was worth their while. These major championships make a lot of money for them, and they use it for their own missions. It's a nonprofit organization, so it's not like it's just something going to somebody's pocket. But it was competitive. I'm glad we won, and we wanted to get them a little sooner than we did, because everybody's doing the math about how old they'll be in 2035. But it'll still be great for this community. And we also got a couple great events in between.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, Vinny, last question. Where can listeners learn more about your work or follow ESD's regional efforts?
Well, that's great. I mean, obviously, any social media account to follow Governor Hochul or Empire State Development is great. Our website is esd.ny.gov. It's a great resource for anyone interested in business. But I'd also encourage you to connect with the One Rock Alliance or any of our partners, the Greater Rochester Chamber of Commerce, Greater Rochester Enterprise. Those are really the local places that you'll start to get a better connection. And like I said, we really work as a team. And so if you've got a question that is not right for GRE, and they'll send you to the state and vice versa. If nothing else, we're responsive. We're humble and hungry, as my favorite football coach likes to say. We will chase down any opportunity and help you try to overcome whatever problem you're having, which I know is not always easy, particularly when it comes to government and bureaucracies. But we're there to help. That's what ESD does. That's what the other organizations do, and that's what I'm interested in.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us, Vinny, today on the Wilmac Wire. Steve, do you have...
Thank you, Vinny. Appreciate it. Time well spent. Great insight. Learned a lot, actually.
Yeah, a ton.
Great to see you now that you're a big shot podcast.
Yeah.
I mean, this is such a surprise.
Sweet studio in here.
It is a sweet studio. You got the setup.
Yeah, another shout out to Rockbox Studios. As we said, thanks for being a friend of the podcast, a friend of the McDonnell family. It was awesome to have this conversation. Like Steve said, learned a ton. So that's it. Thanks for tuning into the Wilmac Wire. Easy enough, right?
Thank you. Go Bills.
Go Bills.
Go Bills.
Thank you for listening to the Wilmac Wire. If you like today's conversation, make sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts or watch full episodes on our YouTube channel. You can also learn more about Wilmac Technologies and our work in customer interaction technology at wilmactech.com. We'll be back soon with more conversations with the drivers, those shaping our industry and those building right here in Western New York. See you next time. Thank you for listening to the Wilmac Wire. If you like today's conversation, make sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts or watch full episodes on our YouTube channel. You can also learn more about Wilmac Technologies and our work in customer interaction technology at wilmactech.com. We'll be back soon with more conversations with the drivers, those shaping our industry and those building right here in Western New York. See you next time.